Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast. My name is Jed and we are reading the Philosophical Midwifery book to understand the nature of human problems and the new paradigm for understanding and removing them. Super important. So we are in chapter 3 of the book and we've been reviewing where we are so far in terms of understanding the different kinds of beliefs and how they can be hierarchically arranged, and by what are they hierarchically arranged. We've been seeing how the levels of development or levels of belief are better if they are supported by sufficient evidence. Ultimately, there is a class of belief which cannot be shown with evidence, but is self-evidently true. An axiom. The kind of belief that is the height, the top or hypothesis of beliefs themselves. So, axioms, scientific beliefs, simple beliefs, supernatural beliefs, prejudices, and pathologos, the 6 different kinds of belief. And now we're getting into analogy. We did a huge review of it last time, and we had a fun conversations with chatters. So check that out if you haven't seen that one, where we break down the significance of analogy in understanding the nature of our problems, but also why it's there. How can a problem affect us in this kind of a way and be the most powerful force in the universe? There must be something built into our soul that is receptive. In other words, there is an actual game we're here to be playing of learning through development, through the logos, which happens through analogy, that can be usurped, taken over by the false image of what we're here to do. Therefore, if we have the operating system, you could say, that's receptive to certain kinds of things, and the pathologos offers one of those kinds of things while being an imposter, that's the nature of our problems. So we can use the understanding of our problems to shed light on what we are supposed to be doing and help us understand what we're doing when we read philosophy. When we read the Meno, or which is what we're reading right now, or the other Socratic texts, of course, the Balboa translation only, because that's the only one that has the actual words translated properly, then we can use our understanding of analogy to understand how we are able to develop through understanding into higher uses of our own faculties, our own cognition, ultimately to wisdom. So we did that last time, so let's read. So we're in chapter 3, which is about belief and analogy, and we're up to the analogy section. Let's jump in. Here we are. The kinds of beliefs themselves can be ranked by reference to the mode of their cognitive justification or lack of it, in the following descending scale: a logical necessity, axiom; sufficient evidence, scientific; insufficient evidence, simple; lack of evidence, supernatural; denial of evidence, prejudice; unable to relate to or acknowledge the evidence, pathologos. Thus, helping us understand why we have a problem. How can we change our minds if we are unable to relate to or acknowledge evidence? That's the issue. We have defined the pathologos, and in doing so, we have also separated it from other beliefs. While each kind of belief has its own field of operation, and its own kind of problems, it is the exploration of the nature of the sixth kind of belief, the pathologos, that is the object of our study. At the heart of the pathologos problems, there is always the assumption that there is a parallel or meaningful comparison that can be made between one's past and one's present situation. Indeed, a problem exists because, to the believers, their response to the present problems appears so natural to them that they seem to be the most appropriate thing to do. On reflection, we can understand that they relate to their present problems based on what they have learnt to do in their past. They base their way of being on a model derived from past learning, which is to say that they relate to their present as if it were analogous to their past. Analogies behind our problems. Thus, while they believe there is a necessity to their conclusions, there is not only a lack of evidence to support them, but they have to deny a mass of evidence that opposes their conclusions. Further, they become confused and defensive about their situation because they cannot relate to the existence of what they can't acknowledge.
Wow.
While this style of relating appears to be analogical, it is not the result of deliberate and conscious comparative judgment, because if it were, it would mean the terms and the significance would be known to the believer. Consider the following analogy. The believer's present is to the past, as a copy is to a model. So that's our analogy that we're finishing on. Present is to past as copy is to model. The present is a copy of the past, which is a model. For believers, this is where we are. For believers unknowingly act as if they had a model of their past learning in their hand as they act out their roles. This is what we do when we live. We act out roles. The transmission of the pathologos can be represented as a mean analogy. Wow, mean analogy. This is a big one in philosophy.
Wow.
Because if analogy is so significant to reality, to creation, to thinking, to our personal development, to hierarchical structures that are understandable in anything in the world, then we can ask, what's the simplest version of it? Or most hierarchically primary? That's what we're after, right? We're after understanding things by pulling out the key terms, ordering them in a hierarchy, and making our way to the top, or the hyparxis. And if an analogy is A is to B as C is to D, copy is to model as past is to present. No, copy is to model as present is to past. Those are four terms. But you can make it even more simple, and then more primary, and therefore more primary, by doubling up the middle term. A is to B as B is to C, which can also be expressed, and here are our dots. So we went through this already. These dots mean is to. And the double dots mean as. A is to B as B is to C. This is a valid mean analogy of two ratios whose common middle terms are related to the extreme terms. And so, it can express as our grandparents A have related to our parents B, so too our parents relate to us, and us as their children C. However, this only indicates the transmission of the pathologos, not the way the pathologos functions. We need another analogy to represent the pathologos functioning. Consider. Our grandparents passed on some shit to our parents and they passed it on to us. Therefore, our most important role to play or job to do or activity to partake in, if you are a sentient being who has language and the ability to self-reflect, is midwifery. 2, stop this cycle of violence, cycle of ignorance. We need another. Okay, there are several roles one can play through the pathologos. A child can play his assigned role or play one of the roles of his parents. We talked about people last time trying to copy their parents when they relate to people doing well in things that they love, because it's analogous to when they were participating in what they love and their parent related to them in that way. And we talked about how those people suck. And it's better to be open and curious and enjoy the music and not try and play that role. And one of the key words that will set off a red flag is let me give you some advice. And we're talking about a silly YouTube video with Jordan Peterson, cultural figure who kind of personifies the movement from mainstream through that right-wing grifter pipeline into being a mouthpiece for genocide and fascism, while appealing to the biggest demographic, because that's what fascism has to do. Pretend it's not the fascists and the capitalists and the billionaires that are causing problems, but it's a minority, to get the majority to hate the minority and not the fascist, the parent. Someone playing the parent role. Anyway, so in that YouTube video, it was Jordan Peterson debating college kids. And he wasn't able to reason at all, or think at all, or conclude at all, or even engage in any sort of discussion. Anytime any question was asked, he would just reply with, let me give you some advice. You stink. You're a piece of work. You need to blah, 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 blah. Just scolding, irrational, playing the role of his parent, who was playing the role of his grandparent. Therefore, it was a stupid waste of time. Because there ain't no way you're going to reason your way out of that, Peterson. Because that kind of problem is characterized by an inability to relate to or acknowledge the evidence. So not only was it absurd, but he probably walked away thinking he won. Which is interesting. So a child can play his role or play the role of his parents. And we've been talking about how, hey, if you're not doing philosophy and midwifery, this is your fate. Your soul will seek beauty, but not real beauty, because you're not doing midwifery and philosophy, so it will seek this fake appearance of beauty, which is another way of saying the child will try and create or spend his life trying to create the conditions for him to play out his pathologos, relate to others the way his parents related to him, with impunity. How can I do this injustice that I think is the best and get away with it? And you can project that onto society. Hey, how many people and then if you give those people power, they'll do the exact same thing, but to everyone. So we have a genocide being perpetrated by the Jewish version, their particular version of the pathologos, just as the Germans did it with their version, just as the Americans they're doing the genocide too, as the Americans and the Jewish people. who are doing that, or the Israelis. But you throw a rock. Throw a rock and you'll hit someone with a pathologos. Give them power and they'll just play it out more. That's the human problem. Now, hopefully we have gotten to a stage where we can be able to conclude based on that. Therefore, if that's true, how would we conclude? Would we say things like every single person with power must show an understanding and mastery of philosophical midwifery, otherwise it will predictably, inevitably end in tragedy of the flavor of their pathologos, with them thinking they're doing the greatest job, they're the goodest boy, as they murder 14,000 babies right now, which is happening right now. 14,000 Palestinian babies are starving to death at the time of recording. And the politicians and people who have the money and the guns and the power ain't doing shit. No, they are. They are doing it on purpose. I don't know why. They are so compelled to harm everyone other than themselves and their family. They're doing it. We would say, of course. It always happens. It's a fundamental principle that you can understand. And therefore, if you're mature, you will use that understanding to function in the world. In other words, it's a prerequisite for power of any kind. Which is fantastic. It's only good things. The only problem with that is people who are ignorant of it will say, no, we don't, that's not the only way of doing it. I have my model. It's pray to Allah, or pray to spaghetti monster in the sky. Or it's my model of psychotherapy that I learnt from blah, 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 blah. But that's not true. That's just a also inevitable, predictable counterattack to people being loyal to what they're familiar with or their own pathologos. When the parent's role is to the child, A is to B, and the child is playing the parental role, as the child playing the parent's role is to those children, the children desires to treat as he was treated. Okay. This is the thing. People desire to treat others the way they were treated. Do unto others what was done unto you. Do they have a choice? No. Why not? Because we don't have the pathologos. The pathologos has us. For the child, right. So A is to B is the parent to the child. The child treating others the similar way is also A is to B. For the child in playing the parent's role is neither the child nor the parent, but is playing the role of the parent in the pathologos role. Yet the parent's role in acting out the pathologos is what was transmitted to them. In truth, when playing out the pathologos role, they are not parenting. They are not parenting. This is key. Because the names that we give to people is based on how they function. If you're kicking a baby, but you gave birth to that baby, you're not being a parent. That's not parenting. So a lot of stupid people will say, I know how to raise a kid because I've got kids. And then you say, no, it's bad to kick a baby. And they'll say, do you have kids? And the implication is, if you have kids, suddenly you gain wisdom and knowledge and experience, which is fucking stupid. And a lie. But it's a convenient lie because then they can pretend that the harmful thing that they are doing is just because it was done to you. And children are dependent, so they don't have a say yet. Well, they can't fight back. So we say you're not being a parent. That's not parenting. That's a different thing. Child kicker. The transmission of the pathologos can be represented as A is to B as A is to B. Or this. So that mean analogy was to do with the transmission. And let's have a look at this. Okay, the transmission of the pathologos can be represented as... Right, so this is how it's passed on. A is to B as A is to B. For the model is to the copy as the authority is to the child. So this is our for terminology. Model is to copy as, here's our middle word, authority is to child. So let's make this pink on this side and green on this side. And then in the transmission passage, we see the authority becomes the model. A is to B as A is to B. So one's the transmission of the pathologos. You get it from your mama, and she got it from her mama. But the passage, and it's whenever you can be an authority to someone, you'll play out the models to copy. So you are copying the more real model of reality or paradigm of reality, which is your parents, or your parents doing it to their, modeling after their grandparents. In the transmission passage, we see it's different. Expressed in this way, the analogy is invalid since it is a redundant ratio that repeats itself. A is to B is to A is to B, that doesn't go anywhere. It's stagnant, redundant. Therefore, the analogical structure of the way a pathologos functions is said to exist as a distorted analogy. Wow.
Wow. Wow. Wow. Wow.
This is key because we've been seeing, as we've been going in this channel, that everything that we have been seeing in philosophy has a kind of distorted reflection in what we're learning in midwifery, and vice versa. Learning in midwifery can be understood as a distorted reflection of what we're doing in philosophy. And we've been reflecting on why that has to be the case. How can the image of beauty have such a hold over the entirety of your life if our soul didn't have the programming to accept beauty in that fundamental way? Oh, we have a follower. Hello and welcome. How are you doing? Yo, what's good? Good question. What is the good? That's what we're trying to figure out. What is the good? And what is the false image of the good that we unknowingly carry with us in our soul, that we project onto the world, which is called interpretation, adding what's not there, that chains us to us repeating our problems over and over without being able to change. Because we want to find that image of the good that has that power, remove it, so we can go on the quest, the human quest, the reason why you are here, to find the true nature of the good. Which is also super important because everything we do we think is good. Watching Netflix we do because we think it's good, or it will make us good. Every activity. So, if you are rational and mature, you'll ask the question, well, what is the good? And who is my teacher? What we are learning is our teachers also didn't understand the good, but were imitating their parents, who imitated their parents. But our soul is so primed and programmed to seek the good, necessarily for us to be able to evolve closer from bad to good, or ignorance to learning, or images and beliefs to understanding and knowledge and wisdom. We have to be seeking the good. We seek the good, what is just, what is beautiful. But only when we can free ourselves from the distorted analogy or the distorted image of those things that keep us chained to one state of mind, one way of relating to each situation, which we call fate. So we're kind of like walking zombies. Because we don't have it, it has us. And it's called the pathologos. Okay, this guy is not actually interested, so let's ban him. But it's a good But is a let's just delete that too over here. There we go. Hey, my first troll. That's interesting. Normally, I guess people who are seeking philosophy streams are usually open-minded people, but this is the first one we've gotten that wasn't. There you go. The pathologos, so the structure of the pathologos functions, therefore the analogical structure of the way a pathologos functions is said to exist as a distorted analogy, like what we've been seeing as a distorted reflection. So as this is a reflection of the true analogy we're seeking when we do seek the good, in other words, this physical world and our everyday actions in the world of becoming, the physical world, should be a copy based on the model. Don't you want all of your creations to be good and beautiful? Unlike the Dawkins, I don't know, whoever it was in chat. You don't want to be bad and harmful. So we need a model of the good to use to judge whether our creations are indeed just and beautiful. The distorted model is the pathologos. But what's interesting is it also functions through a distorted analogy because the analogy itself don't work. A is to B is A is to B. It's redundant. The pathologos itself is therefore irrational, as it's a distorted or stagnant or redundant ratio. We can say it is therefore irrational. This is key. This is key. So using our fellow dude in chat, he acted in an irrational way. He stumbled across, a stream that could help him understand himself, the nature of his problems, and the quest that he is on as a human being, but he acted in an irrational way, against his own interest, against reason. Why? Well, whatever was motivating him couldn't be an analogy. He was trying to relate to me in a shitty way that was related to him. It's what trolls do. And they think if they do that, if they act irrationally and harmfully or in a bad way to other people, then they are wise or knowing because that's what was done to them. And they've never thought about even questioning their teachers. So whatever temporary burst of endorphin someone gets when they kick over a child's Lego set, or like this guy tries to shit on people for creating something that could help others, that little spark of pleasure is sadism, and also redundant. Often people who shit on others do so because they are stuck in a redundant analogy, an irrational analogy, and therefore can't create anything. They can't create anything themselves. Because when they were creating as a child, that's when their parent came in and said, no fucking way, not in this house. And we have two choices as human beings. Reflect on the nature of when that happened to us, so we don't do it to ourselves anymore, and we don't walk around in the world like this jerk and do it to others, or walk around in the world and do it to others and ourselves, harming ourselves and others and preventing our development. But again, no one's going to force you to do it. You'll get a problem if you're a human being, necessarily. Which is why it's important to recognize and call out people when they act that way and say, hey, by the way, have you thought about why you act this way? If you get pleasure kicking over a Lego set that somebody made, what's that called? Because it's not parenting. This is key. If that chatter was able to go back to his parents and say, hey, you know what? Every time I encounter someone doing something good or something that can help me, I try and destroy it. Just like when you kicked over my Lego set when I was a kid. You always told me that you loved me and that you knew what's best and played God King at home, but I think you were lying. It takes a certain kind of person to say that to the figures who imitated goodness and care and love all through your childhood. Not my dad, not my mum, says every single human being, which for me seemed insane. I think this is why I was so attracted to philosophy. It makes rational it makes clear and simple the rational. Immediately that didn't make sense to me because I had neighbors and they were terrible to their kids. But their kids didn't think so. I had a similar experience in college when I realized that there were other religions and they were all batshit crazy. I was really confused as to why people could easily see Scientology as a scam, or what people overseas were doing as crazy, but would never seem to apply that principle to themselves. Isn't that interesting? Aren't humans interesting? Understanding the pathologos as a distorted analogy makes clear that the pathologos is static. Since it undergoes no transformation, you don't learn shit. So what's the jerk in chatter? We'll just call him jerk face. So jerk face here in chat can't learn. If he stuck around long enough to hear that exploration of what might be behind him acting so irrationally, he's not going to change. Because it is static, since it undergoes no transformation, people don't change when they're acting out their pathologos. And it's a primitive function. This is interesting. The pathologos is something primitive to evolution that blocks the development of man. So man had a primitive function that blocks our development. So we often talk about T-Rex and how all these guys were wiped out with the asteroid, and we were able to venture out rather quickly from the cave without having to address necessarily the pathologos in order to function with a degree of excellence that will allow us to challenge these dudes for leadership over the planet. In order to protect and care for all species, including humans, so we don't get eaten, but also these guys, and the whole planet, which is where we are now. We are moving into a stage of evolution where we need to care for the planet, which we're not doing, because capitalism is stupid. Capitalism itself is a primitive level of development. Man the maker into man the caretaker. So, Block's development, it is a repeating ratio, not an analogy. A repeating ratio. People who have not done this are stuck. Some more than others. Some are able to push out for a while, but fall back. But inevitably, this is our quest as human beings. It ain't personal, but it's true and universal. We are stuck in a repeating ratio. Doing to others what was done to our parents, done to our grandparents, all the way back to the cave. It's not an analogy, even though it suggests an analogy in the form the parent authority is to the child, so the child will be to his child universe. So the way the parental authority relates to us when we were young, so too we will relate to our universe. Projection, we call that. Clearly, on the appearance level, it might seem that this pathologos transmission of a learning should take the form of the classic teacher-student analogy. It would seem that way. As the teacher is to the student, so too, the student, in becoming a teacher, can teach and apply that teaching to the universe. Which is interesting. So it seems like what's inherent, what the author is seeing inherent, is not just learning something, but actively teaching what you've learnt to others is a necessary step in applying that teaching to the universe. It says can teach. It doesn't say you should. Although that was said in the last chapter. He encourages us to share our understanding and seeing with others, which can unlock higher levels of development that we wouldn't be able to unlock without it. Insight into humanity and ourselves. So that's the mean analogy. The true teacher to student analogy is the mean analogy, this one. A is to B as B is to C. So Diotima is to Socrates, as Socrates is to Glaucon. Or Parmenides is to Socrates, teaching him the dialectic, as Socrates is to us, teaching us the dialectic. So the difference, which is the way of using language and reason to solve problems and reach our destiny. Oh, and also do anything else, like create something. If you want your creations to be beautiful and good, same deal. However, the difference between the teaching analogical paradigm and the learning in the pathologos paradigm lies in the differences in the relations, not the terms. So the difference between the teaching analogical paradigm and the pathologos paradigm lies in the differences in the relations, not the terms. Clearly, what can be said about the relations and how they differ from one another. Consider what can be said. In the teaching analogy, the paradigm includes the following. The teaching must be explicit. The teaching must be communicated to the student. The teacher must have a knowledge of what is being taught. The teacher can be questioned and tested. The teaching can be applied in some situations successfully. The conclusions drawn from the transmission have been explicitly taught and can be accepted as true by the learner. The teacher in the act of teaching does not have to appear as a knower or appear sincere, caring, or possessing any particular virtue. The transmission is public and is a repeatable event. In the pathologos analogical paradigm, a teaching analogical paradigm, and a pathologos analogical paradigm. Analogical means there is a transmission of a kind of relationship, a way of relating to others, transmitted to others. That's the analogy. And paradigm just means model. The teaching is implicit or not explicit. Remember, it's all a big show. It's all a big charade. And they want you to make the conclusions. The teacher has no knowledge of what is being taught and is not aware of the implications of what is being transmitted. They don't know shit. They're just cosplaying. Because that's all they learned. They think that's it. Look at any businessman or authority figure or teacher. See if they're just cosplaying. When really they're just trying to figure it out like you and me. Figure out what? Well, how to discover the logos, of course. So why are they cosplaying? Why do all these authority figures pretend they know all this shit and they don't? Why did Jordan Peterson get immediately defensive and start attacking everyone trying to ask him simple basic questions instead of helping these fucking kids learn? Isn't he a teacher? Doesn't he care about the youth? That's his whole marketing thing. Why did he attack everyone? Imitation. Pathologos cannot be questioned or tested. In the Meno, when Anytos's view of justice or virtue was questioned, he immediately threatened to murder Socrates. Ever tried to talk to a fundamentalist? Cannot be questioned or tested, so that's not actually teaching. Real teaching, you should also always be able to test it and question it. The conclusions drawn from so anyone who says shut up, they're stuck in a problem, they are being a child, or they're stuck in a redundant analogy, they're stuck in their sickness, and should not be leading you, should not listen to them. The conclusions brought down from the transmission have not been explicitly taught, but are assumed to be true by the believer. So there's no learning process, I just assume it's obvious. So common sense is a word these chaps like to use, a phrase. In the act of transmission, the authority has to appear as a knower, sincere, caring, and possessing virtue. So all the things we seek in our true human quest, they have short-circuited their whole life and their whole purpose and the whole reason for being alive by just pretending to do the thing you're here to do. Appearance. So far as the pathologos as believed, the believer cannot relate to the transmission. So far as it's believed, the believer cannot relate to the transmission. Cannot relate the transmission to its inception or origin. Which means what? Well, yeah, it means that if you understand the origin of your false beliefs, maybe you can free yourself from being tied to believing it. The transmission is always private, unusual, and a rare event. A special moment. When Ma or Pa finally showed themselves, finally spoke out, finally appeared most beautiful, knowing, sincere, caring, and virtuous. It's a rare event. And this is the big one, what is learned is irreconcilable with one's significant goals. Which means a couple of things. Number one, This is why it's a problem. Number 2, you better be going for your most significant goals if you are actually wanting to do what we're here for. Because it's that which is irreconcilable with it that will surface to block us. That's the material we need to do in midwifery to trace it back to its inceptional origin, so we can review the appearance of these authority figures, judge it against our true understanding of knowledge, sincerity, caring, and virtue, question it in a way that hasn't been questioned before, point out that they have no knowledge of what they're doing and they're just imitating the same bullshit that happened to them, and make explicit what was implicit. That's our job as human beings. And in chapter 2, we looked at Plato, and we also asked questions about if that's the case, what does it say about why we're here? And we looked at Plato talking about how our soul missed a kind of opportunity that it had in its higher level of existence, causing it to be need to address that, whatever it was that got in the way of your soul's development in a higher level. So therefore, in this world, space and time, it's the only place where we can reflect on that kind of a problem our soul has. What does that mean? That means we're born into a world swimming in problems. Because everyone here is here to address a significant false belief about the nature and self and reality that blocks your most significant goals, specifically your soul's movement towards self-truth reality. So what? Everyone has to get the opposite. Whatever it was blocking them, forcing them to play it out in time, forcing them to have to address it if they want to overcome their problems or they want to become good people. Here we are in a zombie land. Learning the thing all zombies are here to learn, to unzombify ourselves. So, the difference between the two analogies lies in the meaning of the relations between the terms. These analogies then function in different ways. For in the classic teaching analogy, the teaching becomes a way to the successful application of the learning, while in the pathologos analogy, it becomes the paradigm for failure. So teaching teaches you a way to successfully apply what you learn, while pathologos analogy becomes the paradigm for failure. Really makes you wonder about the nature of this loyalty we have to dictators and fascists and systems that harm everything like capitalism, considering how fiercely, vehemently, blindly loyal we are to our parents, our image of our parents being actually good and real parents when they weren't at those times, defending them as being knowing when they were ignorant and lying, while they pass on a pathologos analogy, which is the paradigm for all our failures. Why is this what we are most vehemently attached to or loyal to? Could that explain how people can be loyal to things like Trump, who is comically a personification of the worst of humanity? So, real teaching can be a successful application of the learning, while the pathologos analogy is the paradigm for failure. These two analogies move in the same kind of space and time. The striving for significant goals uses the teaching paradigm, but unknown to the believer, it is replaced by the pathologos analogy and becomes the paradigm for failure. Two analogies move in the same kind of space and time. Hey, welcome. Welcome, TV. How's it going? What you wondering about today? The striving for significant goals uses the teaching paradigm, but unknown to the believer, okay, this is where we are. We think we are striving for our most significant goals using a teaching paradigm, but actually it was the paradigm of the pathologos. So it gets replaced by the pathologos analogy and becomes the paradigm for failure. Isn't that interesting? As human beings strive for their most significant goals, we think we are using a teaching paradigm, applying what we've, presuming we've gone through these 8 steps: explicit, communicated to the student, teacher has the knowledge, question and testing, you can apply it and test it out and have success. The conclusions are explicitly taught, not like a little trick, like, oh, every time you meditate, everyone in your family mocks you. The teaching is implicit. They want you to come to the conclusion, I must be the one doing the wrong thing, by self-reflection and not being a slave to papa. So, and the teacher in the act of teaching does not have to appear. It's nothing to do with your appearance. That's why ad hominem attacks show a movement from a teaching analogy to a stagnant, irrational ratio. Whenever anyone says, I don't like your tone, or you don't look like a guru to me, or I'm not talking to you about that because you're not the Dharma successor of my Buddhist line, or how many qualifications in philosophy do you have? Any of these things are about trying to present yourself as an appearance of these things. Knowing, sincere, caring, having virtues. It's public. It's not done behind closed doors, which makes our current living situation so stupid and irrational that children are just kept behind closed doors in this box where parents can just do this shit to their kids with impunity. That's fucked. It's public and repeatable. Anyone can learn it. It's for everyone. Notice, nothing really. Was hanging around on my own, found a book which is going to be checked out, I think. What's the book? Is it Jesus and Socrates, A Dialogue in Heaven by Pierre Grimes? Is it all relative? Is It All Relative by Pierre Grimes? Because those are 2 fantastic books, and they're both blue. Public and repeatable. Which is interesting because notice, okay, let's just use current political. Typing words from your book here, didn't find it verbatim. Another one for some reason. What kind of book are you looking for? What you interested in? Pretty much type in author Pierre Grimes and you'll find gold. You can find, oh, by the way, we're reading, just on this note, we're reading the philosophical midwifery book, but there is a smaller version called the Pocket Pierre, and it comes with a workbook. It's kind of a simplified introduction to this. Oh, the philosophical midwifery book, the orange book. Now, you might be in luck because I think they just did a new production of those books. So you might be able to find a copy on Amazon or something. Type in philosophical midwifery, a new paradigm for understanding human problems by Dr. Pierre Grimes. And look for Pocket Pierre as well. The small version of this. Right, so right now, the teachings that happen in the family, the Jewish families, is a secret teaching behind closed doors. You are the chosen people. Anything we do to others is okay because we're chosen by God. Anything they do to us is bad, so we're perpetually a victim. Oh, we're just victims. So they play this cry-bullying game. So they go out and commit a genocide, and then people say, hey, stop killing 14,000 babies. Stop starving to death 14,000 babies. Stop dropping bombs on hundreds of thousands of people living in the largest open-air concentration camp prison. Stop doing that, and the Jews will say, oh, but you're bullying me. That kind of thing. Because it's a private teaching, and it's not repeatable. They can't go to the Palestinians and say, hey, listen, you're the chosen people, and you can just kill others, and that's fine. Because we say so, and we just made it up. You can't repeat that event. Whereas true teaching is repeatable. Anyone can learn math. Anyone can learn calculus. If the Jewish state of Israel was actually a rational state and was actually teaching, they'd be not loading people up with sniper rifles because they're actively for fun, sniping children and babies, which is a horrific demonstration of what fun is, but consistent with what we're seeing here. Instead of that, they loaded them up with math textbooks or philosophy books or dialogues. Anyone who wants to learn. It's a repeatable event. That's the significance of changing or recognizing the two fundamental kinds of analogies that we can relate to as human beings, the teaching paradigm and the pathologos one. Because the teaching one includes everyone. It seems I'd better read it here with you on the stream till I get one myself. Yeah. I think the Pocket Pierre is quite cheap, and normally when you order it off like whatever bookstore or Amazon, it comes suggested with a workbook. But yeah, there's the book we're reading used to be like $500 to buy, but they've just done another production line like a few months ago, maybe a year ago. And so you should be able to find more copies of them out there. So yeah, a repeatable event. This is key because it has to be a repeatable event to include humanity. What we need to do as a species is find a way of being that includes everyone. And say, oh, that's the actual rational teaching analogy paradigm. If you have a secret private teaching saying all Jews are victims, but we can kill others because we're chosen. Now, literally, we are chosen by God is the mythological representation of the pathologos. Achilles in the Iliad is a story of somebody with a terrible pathologos, the worst kind of person, going through philosophical midwifery, realizing that he was literally chosen by the gods because his mother was a god and he was half god himself, is dipped with his Achilles heel, being held by his Achilles heel. So any group of people that say we are chosen by God is comedically obviously declaring this is my pathologos, because that's the nature of it. We are right. The neighbor's parents are fucked. The religions overseas are fucked, but not my parents. We are the right ones. We are the chosen ones. God favors us. We don't have to learn this. We don't have to develop. And that impulse is played into by fascists. Hey, largest minority. Let's take America. Largest majority, white Christian males. You are the chosen people. If you vote for me, I'll keep telling you that. So you don't have to do this work. You never have to challenge your parents. You never have to be uncomfortable. You can walk around with this same bullshit ignorance from your childhood. so long as you vote for me. I will tell you you're better and you can look down on everyone else because you're the chosen ones. Meanwhile, I'm lying to you and I'm just distracting you from the fact we are stealing everything from you and sending you to concentration camps if you ever challenge us the same way my parents were tyrants to me. Repeating the redundant ratio and manipulating the redundant ratios of others who haven't recognized that the pathologos analogical paradigm is the redundant, stagnant, distorted, irrational ratio version of what we're really here to do: learn the teaching analogy paradigm. Simple. 2 things. It always comes down to 2 things when the things become simple. The one I downloaded for free is called The Handbook of Logical Thought of India. Okay. Good luck. The only benefit I see in that would be to, if you happen to be born, are you Indian? Were you born and raised in India? Because understanding the history of the cultural beliefs, what we call milieu, within your upbringing can be super helpful in recognizing your unsuspected pathologos analogy. You haven't grown yet. It's just natural to follow the parents' pathologos. Yes. So what we're doing is growing, learning about this. Hey, even reading other books about like maybe you grew up in India as a Sikh. What's the history of the Sikh religion? Were there any figures, notable figures, that shared more in the logos? Did they try and share it in the teaching? Was there a counterattack? For example, in Christianity, it's important to understand Paul. Because the Christianity that people today are raised in isn't Jesus' teaching, it's Paul's pathologos. Which becomes clear if you read the book. Understanding Mark. Can you see this is the thing. Now, this kind of reflection into your cultural and religious upbringing can shed light on your problem because your pathologos has to fit within that milieu. Your parents, like if you were raised in, I don't know, let's say the Dark Ages in a Muslim family and you're a girl, they'll teach you things like women are less, cover yourselves, because if you walk out, you'll get killed. It has to fit within the society you're in. However, it does require, well, it seems to me at least, that it does require an understanding of the actual logos and pathologos first. Because how will you know what to look for? How will you recognize that Mark talks about the logos and pathologos if you don't know what they are? In Christianity, we have Dionysus? Hang on, let me pause. And actually, can you remind me what I was just saying? I just lost my train of thought for a second. I was paused for a moment there to fix some audio stuff. So, one paradigm replaces the other. So, isn't it funny how understanding simplifies to 2 terms so often in philosophy? Logos and pathologos, Socrates and Pierre. The dialectic applied to truth, the dialectic applied to removing our pathologos. 2 things, 2 games. But also there's 2 fundamental, so that's interesting. What does that mean? That often when you see something and you most simply, it reduces to only a couple of terms. But here we have two. We have two basic analogies. One replaces the other. One can lead to success, the other failure. Clearly, there is no awareness of the transmission from the one to the other. And true to its form, the pathologos analogy is forgotten by the believer in the wave of... So there's no awareness about pathologos. Again, no justification for abuse through punishment because we don't have an awareness of it. The pathologos analogy is forgotten by the believer in a wave of destructive amnesia. So we talk about, again, another duad here. The amnesia we have of reality that we have to remember through learning, through the good teaching analogy. As Diotima is to Socrates, so Socrates is to us, so we are to our loved ones and our chat. In order to remember. So that's that first level of amnesia. But you can't even begin that process unless you address the next level of amnesia, this amnesia. The destructive amnesia, which is the hallmark of pathologos. We forget that it happened. We forget our goals before it. We forget how often it happens. We forget that we've been playing this out over and over again. These analogies function at the same time in opposite directions. Wow. Isn't that cool? You got one horse pulling you this way, one horse pulling you that way, and we're stuck in the middle like that. Look at this. I want this thing. Right, and one aims towards the future. Another duad. One aims towards the future, true teaching. The other preserves the past. Now, one of the questions that we've been wondering is, if this is the nature of humanity and politics is nothing other than add power to that, and instead of playing it to kids, you're playing it on everyone, what does that mean about how we should understand what politics really is? And not the way it's marketed to us through pathologos and ignorance and milieu. Well, is there a political party that aims towards the future? Is there a political party that conserves the past or preserves the past? So one could potentially be a good political party based on the good analogy, the teaching analogy paradigm. We would say that's the true Logos party, true progression towards the future, progressive. One is the pathologos analogy paradigm. So notice the conservatives or the fascist Republicans or right-wingers always appeal to family pathologos bullshit. Trump's no Christian, but he'll hold a Bible upside down and pretend. And he'll sell you a Bible. Never opened the book. I don't know if he can actually read. He was asked what's his favorite passage. He hasn't read one line. Couldn't even pull one line out. Why? Well, one preserves the past, conserves the past, one progresses towards the future. Now, currently, they're not progressing towards the future. They're both different levels of pathologos because ain't no political party doing midwifery. Get to work. Right into them. Say, hey, by the way, if you want to really progress, you have to learn this teaching analogy because that's how you progress to the future. You can't do that unless you address the problems of the past, a midwifery. And you will never, ever understand how to relate to this conservative thing unless you understand what's really going on. The way these analogies function suggests there is a similarity between them and a wave phenomena, because in wave theory, The principle of imposition states that when waves impact in the same time and space, there is a destructive interference, a cancellation of the resulting wave. Interesting. The teaching paradigm is expressed most simply through the mean analogy and is often called the Dharma transmission analogy. This is a mean analogy. Dharma succession. Dharma is a fancy word for spiritual teaching that can affect your soul. So as Diotima taught Socrates, he passed that Dharma transmission onto us so long as we read the symposium, read the Balboa version of the symposium, while also reading this. Can't do one without the other. The transmission of a teaching through successive persons can be represented through this analogy. One of the most thoughtful presentations of this transmission is found in Plato's Symposium. There we find Socrates, his teacher Diotima. Who's that? Never heard of her before. Socrates, Diotima, and Agathon, exploring the nature of love. Messing with my camera. If we follow how Plato unfolds... hang on. If we follow how Plato unfolds the way each of them functions, we can see the transmission of the teaching from Socrates to Socrates and from Socrates to Agathon. We represent the relations between them in the following table. Teacher is to student, thumbs up, as Diotima is to Socrates. And as Socrates is to Agathon. Or, as Diotima is to Socrates, so too is Socrates to Agathon. This is how you use analogy in speaking. Is to and as. As Diotima is to Socrates, so too is Socrates to Agathon. In this analogy, the highest term, Diotima, has the most unitary grasp of the teaching about love. So much so that she personifies that very teaching herself. Diotima is a personification of love. Ooh. Oh, what happened to my sound effects? My OBS crashed and I had to restart, so I'm going to edit these two clips together for the video. So, trying to go back to where we were before my thing crashed. As Diotima is to Socrates, so too is Socrates to Agathon. In this analogy, the highest term, Diotima, has the most unitary grasp of the teaching about love. So much so that she personifies that very teaching within herself. The entire order of terms becomes unified as the teaching proceeds through the other terms. While she is in no way diminished, she remains complete in herself. In the middle role or mean role, Socrates, as a student and teacher, both receives a teaching and, gives or passes it on to another. So Socrates is in the mean role. Middle role or mean role. Let's use mean role because that's fancier. The mean role. This is us too, right? I'm saying right, like, anyway, like we want to master it for ourselves, but if it's of value, we want to share it with people we care about. So Socrates does this as a teacher, a student and teacher both receives a teaching and gives or passes it on to another. And in that role, he becomes a mediator, linking the whole series together with himself as the mean between the extremes. Mean between the extremes. Walking in both worlds. Since the extremes converge on a center. They converge. Diotima focuses on Socrates, Agathon focuses on Socrates. Now, this is interesting, and keep this in mind because when we do midwifery or dream analysis, there is also a kind of convergence happening as the midwife and the pregnant party both focus their attention on the dream or the stages in your problem that we are exploring through midwifery, written on a board or on a pad or something. Now, not exactly the same, but it is interesting that you need to have, when you explore a problem, you got to write it out. So you're not focused on the other person, like, are you in a problem? You focus on this thing on the board that we're creating together. The dream character or you in a problem goes through some stages and you draw it on the board. And you both focus on it. Since the extremes converge on a center, and as such, he transmits what he has received, draws up the potentiality of the extreme. Agathon producing a common character over the whole series. As Socrates transmits what he receives, he draws up the potentiality of the extreme, Agathon, producing a common character over the whole series. Okay, right. So, in passing it on, he draws up the potential of Agathon, and as such, they're all the same, a common character. We are all philosophers, able to seek the true nature of love. Hey, welcome to the chat. Hey, it's Genevieve. Welcome. How are you doing? What have you been wondering about? Yes, so you draw up the potential of the extreme, producing a common character over the whole series. What would that be like in midwifery? Imagine everyone being able to be raised up. The potential of every human being to be able to raise up to meet the highest possible human being. What if we all become like Diotima and Socrates and Agathon? Well, then we would have created a series, humanity, with a common character. We're all midwives, philosophers, and free of our pathologos. We're non-NPCs now. Wouldn't that be neat? A unified humane and human way of being. Okay, so the last term, Agathon, to the degree he is able, produces a likeness. And in that moment, he reverts upon the original principle. So we're reverting upon the original principle of Diotima. So Diotima has to unfold through Socrates, who's the mean between Agathon, who's never heard of this stuff, but Socrates passes it on to him, and he is able to, if he becomes like Socrates and Diotima, he's able to, in being like Socrates, he's also being like Diotima, and therefore reverting on the original principle. What's the original principle of the whole series? Diotima. Keep in mind, she's also a personification of beauty. So in this game, as philosophers, who can overcome our blocks because we're doing midwifery, then we can participate in this Dharma successorship, or the true teaching model, which is this one, the teaching analogy paradigm. A is to B as B is to C. Diotima is to Socrates as Socrates is to us. we can do the real teaching model instead of the other thing that humans get, the crappy one, the distorted version of it, which is A is to B as A is to B. I'm going to do the same bullshit that happened to me. No one learns, no one changes, no one's potential is drawn out. It's a stagnant, irrational analogy. So what? Well, that means that we have the potential to be like Socrates and Diotima, but also be beautiful. Because in philosophy, we seek to remove this false image of beauty, which sustains our pathologos, to be able to revert on, not Diotima, but what she personifies, beauty itself. And therefore, making our souls more beautiful, making our creations more beautiful, making our relationships more beautiful. Because we're reverting on the original principle of beauty itself. Now, one of the problems with, so to illustrate how this functions within us as individuals, it can be fun to expand it to the state or the society. So one of the reasons why we have difficulty talking to right-wingers or conservatives is because they don't use principles, supposedly. But the thing is, it isn't that they're not using principles, it's that the principle that they are using, they don't know they're using. Because it's the stagnant one. Because the teaching was not made explicit. It can't be repeated. It's their own image of their parents. So if Trump was being honest, he would say, yeah, my model of justice is the same kind of stuff that my KKK officer father, billionaire, scammer, grifter, sociopath, did to me. He can't say that because he doesn't know that everything he does is a kind of reflection or imitation of that same principle. And you couldn't run on that in politics. And it's not a universal principle, so it's specifically based on this oppression thing. So it doesn't apply equally. So the Israelis are saying, well, we get to genocide you, but you can't fight back against us. The principle being, my parents could crush me, but we couldn't crush our parents as children. That's not a real principle. That's tyranny. But we can free ourselves from that, and that's not love, by the way, even though it appears that way. To him. Right, so we can revert upon the original principle, teachings of Diotima, become beautiful ourselves. Agathon is exhibiting the potential that proceeds from Diotima, the primary term. And in that there is a reversion of the last term upon the principle of procession personified by Diotima. There's a footnote. It's our first footnote, I think. I gotta find it. Now, let me find where the footnotes are. See Proclus's Elements of Theology. Compare the structure of this argument in Is It All Relative for the discussion on analogy. Well, we're going to read Is It All Relative together at some stage in the analogy section. Okay, so we're not only reverting on beauty and to be like Diotima, we are reverting on the principle of procession itself. In the beginning of Socrates' speech, Socrates and Agathon are described as sharing the same mistaken views about love and wisdom. The views they have are mistaken since they would not allow one to reach the truth about love and beauty. So there is a love and beauty, they exist, you can know it as the truth. It's not a matter of opinion, which is based on the false model Even an opinion has to be based on something, usually an imitation of. On discovering his ignorance, Agathon quit the search, but Socrates continued the inquiry to learn the right opinions about love. And later, Socrates gained understanding when he discovered the reasons they were called right opinions. So, Agathon quit. Socrates continued. Hooray. And then gained right opinions about love. So here we have a hierarchy of personal development towards Socrates' I don't want to say enlightenment, because philosophy isn't just the enlightenment experience. There are many levels beyond that we progress through. So we'll say Socrates having completed his task as a human being. Socrates says at the end of the Phaedo, I've done my work here. I've finished this level, the human level. And that requires a progression through right opinions and then understanding. Notice, not dearly held opinions or personal opinions, but right opinions from someone else, from Diotima. If you want to go to LA, talk to someone who's been there before first. And then you'll gain understanding once you discover the reasons that were called right opinions. Thus, Socrates moves from ignorance to right opinion. So that's that first stage. So we have ignorance at the beginning, again, the good kind, not the Dunning-Kruger or the pathologos kind. You know you don't know. You're not mistakenly think that you know that which you don't. So recognizing you don't know something like the nature of love, so you can be open to Socrates and Diotima, helping you understand. Then you gain the right opinions from those people. Then you gain understanding once you discover the reasons why they say that they're right opinions. So Socrates moves from ignorance to right opinions to understanding and goes on to reach, and then if he is successful in his quest, he may move on to knowledge. So now we have 4 levels of cognitive development you can go through, provided you're also doing philosophical midwifery to work on removing what blocks you from that progression. And again, this is universal. You don't have to be Buddhist or Taoists, or Muslim or Jew or the chosen people. It's literally just what it means to be any intelligent creature who's reached this level of reflection and participation in reason, logos. Now, participate often means taking a part. So let's say share in the logos. For in being initiated into the steps leading to that blessed vision of beauty itself, so there are steps. We call this the initiation, spiritual initiation. They lead to a blessed vision, so a divine vision of beauty itself. Socrates may confirm in experience an understanding of what Diotima shared with them. Now those are the 3 big words. So the difference between any kind of belief, including religious beliefs, and understanding is you can't confirm beliefs in experience, whereas this kind of understanding of the logos can be. Because beauty itself is a vision that you can experience. Check it out. And obviously come back and tell the rest of us all about it, how you got there, how long were you able to stay there, were there levels of depth, did any of our reading help in anything, in getting there, in staying there, in going further? Were you able to ask a question even in that perhaps blissful experience of beauty itself? Were you still curious? Were you still stung? So please share with us. To help us learn and stuff, and to help yourself. It's a win-win.
It's a win-win.
So confirm an experience and understanding of what Diotima shared. So, ignorance to right opinions, to understanding, confirmed an experience of that vision, which we call knowledge, or the initiation or spiritual experience. So he may become qualified to teach those who in turn may transmit the teaching to others. Remember, we talked about you have to have some sort of knowledge that qualifies you as a teacher. Now, keeping in mind, we're all learning together, so we can still help each other out as we go. If he gains the confirming vision, make that purple, he can only then be said to have proceeded through ignorance, right opinion, understanding, and have reached knowledge or wisdom. Now, he is throwing in this wisdom word. What's the difference between wisdom and knowledge? Hopefully the author will make that clear. Thus he moves through all of the places of the analogy, occupies each, and completes what was required to be done. Notice. Same thing as what we've been seeing here, right? If every human being has these two kinds of teaching models, one, the real one, we have to learn how to be a teacher like Socrates and Diotima, and the negative one, our parents pretending, making all these 8 mistakes, imitating, creating a stagnant analogy that doesn't allow for learning, just simply imitation, hurt people, A is to B is A is to B. Literally, hurt people, A is to B, A is to B. That's the redundant, stagnant, or irrational analogy. We all get that. Don't get a choice. I mean, your choice is whether or not you're human. Therefore, we can conclude if this is a universal true principle of the cause of human problems and what we're able to do once we're free of our problems to reach the blessed vision of beauty itself, knowledge, wisdom, by going through those stages of philosophical ignorance, right opinion, understanding the reasons why, and then confirming that understanding in your direct experience or the knowledge experience. Maybe all of that together is wisdom? Maybe? It's a question. If that's the case, then we can recognize as individuals we populate the particulars of that single game, but it is still a single game. The human movement from pathologos to logos through a mastery of the logos. What does that mean? That means we can confidently say there is a meaning to life for everyone. Therefore, we can recognize the paradigm, so we can recognize deviations from that paradigm to see the difference between right and wrong. At the start of today's stream, we were talking about the importance of understanding the logos so we can judge whether or not Wittgenstein or Nietzsche or Hegel or any of those European authorities were right or not. Otherwise, why the hell are you reading Kant if you can't judge him? How close to the truth did he get? Truth? We never studied that at school. Yeah, no shit. That's what we're doing here. So we can say that there is a human quest or a purpose or a reason we're here or an objective universal meaning to life, allowing us to recognize when we deviate from that. When we stop doing midwifery, when we stop pursuing the logos, and maybe we embrace our pathologos for a while. Or we get a position of authority and we find ourselves playing out pathologos because finally we have an opportunity to. Uh-oh. Can we understand that that simple deviation is the cause of all human problems? Is genocide nothing other than people not progressing from the pathologos to the logos and playing out their pathologos fantasies or images of beauty or justice? Therefore, a single purpose. We can correct ourselves. We can recognize people who are acting unjustly in the world and shouldn't be in power, or shouldn't have power to inflict their injustice on others who are vulnerable. Simple stuff. All of this means that we can come to this conclusion that it is entirely possible to complete what was required to be done as a human being. So sometimes people say things like, anything goes. Life is what you want it to be. Hey, you love a genocide? Who cares? You want to be a Catholic? That's no different than being a Protestant. Any pick one, they're all equally valuable. Really? Well, what are we here for? Clearly, Diotima, by the way, that's a way of thinking called it's all relative. It's all relative to opinions or perspective, rejecting this progression that we've just understood of the teaching analogy paradigm. So that's, is it all relative? A very common belief in today's society, which is why I'm excited to get into that book written by Pierre, a dialogue where people are at a coffee shop exploring that idea. Is it all relative or is there truth? If there's truth, then we can recognize good from the bad, demand that of people who are in charge, of course, and complete our work. The reason you're born. Clearly, Diotima recognizes the difficulty in this cognitive jump. We talked about ourselves recognizing the difficulty because to become a midwife, you have to learn it yourself by going through it yourself. So you can also recognize the difficulties people have at every stage of that human movement because you have gone through it. And we are happy about that. But we have to make a cognitive jump from understanding to knowledge, since she shares with Socrates her own reservations about Socrates' ability to make that transition, saying, I do not know. This is how she sounded back then. Scientists have made a rendering of how she sounds. They have you seen these? Like they find these like mummies and stuff. And then they say, well, if we push air through their vocal tracts or something, or recreate their anatomy, we can see how an Egyptian would have sounded, or a caveman, ancient Egyptian or a caveman would have sounded. I've done that with Diotima. This is how she sounds. I do not know if you could ever become an adept, but at least I will try. I will instruct you, she said. And no pains will be lacking. Try to follow me if you can. Brilliant impression. So she's not sure if Socrates is going to make that jump, but she's going to help anyway. And she's leading. Thus, Plato presents Socrates' growth and development, presents that Socrates' growth and development was made possible because after he realized his answers, so he had to realize, his answers to Diotima's questions were wrong, he persisted in his questioning of Diotima. And as a result, came to learn the reasons why these opinions. There's a realization. What's that? Ignorance? The good kind? Realizing you're ignorant? Why the opinions about love and philosophy were right. Right opinions. He can be said to have reached understanding because, this is key for us, because this is what we want to get to. What is understanding? What's the difference between understanding and all those beliefs and things? Because when one has the reasons why these opinions are right, it is called understanding. In a similar way, to reach the next cognitive jump, Socrates would have to experience the perfection of beauty, or beauty itself, or the model of beauty. And in that way, to have confirmed the understanding, this is key. This is the difference between regular physical world education and real education. You confirm, and the difference between religious beliefs where you have to just believe the priest or the guy with the funny hat or whatever. You are supposed to understand it. They are supposed to explain it to you. You're supposed to ask questions. There's no faith involved. That's stupid for stupid babies. Understand, well, firstly get the right opinions. Oh, they can't explain it? Well, maybe they're a stupid baby cosplaying as a Noah because they're putting on a funny dress and wearing a big hat. Like everybody else. This doesn't just apply to doctors and pilots, it applies to clergy as well. Every human being who's not in the game of midwifery. Anyway, they should be, by definition, if it's the true teaching analogy paradigm and not the pathologos irrational one, they can't say, just follow me, just believe me, have faith, just do as you're told. They can't. That's the negative analogy. They need to be able to meet those 8 conditions that we read before. Or explain the right opinions. Encourage the questioning. Even if you're unsure whether they can make cognitive jumps to different levels of cognitive function, psychic being, doesn't matter. She still has some sort of obligation to share it with someone who's genuine and sticks with it. Hey, that was our question last time. Why did Parmenides share his whole philosophy and it was intense? We've only gone through the first part of 9 and that was the hardest thing to read ever. Not hardest, but challenging, I suppose. Why did he go through it? He said he didn't want to. So I'm a retired champion racehorse. I don't want to go back to the racing again. I'm over that. So to Diotima, Socrates met some sort of condition that allowed Diotima to persist and, Socrates persisted, allowed Diotima to share the right opinions, nurture the questions, unlike what you see with religion, which is the opposite. No questions, shut up, get in line, pay me money, or go to hell, literally. Not your, okay, every time I say anything about religion, I don't mean yours. Everyone else's. Isn't that much easier to see? Right, and then, if it's a real teacher, the student should be able to see the reasons for those opinions and confirm the understanding and experience. You can't confirm scientific beliefs in experience. You can't confirm religious beliefs in experience or supernatural beliefs in experience. You can confirm understanding and experience. This is why it's not a spiritual method, it's the spiritual method. Because it's describing the paradigm. All teachings have to follow this by necessity, because that's what analogy is. Otherwise, it's an irrational, redundant analogy. Therefore, any spiritual teacher or system or group needs to be able to encourage questions, help people move from bad ignorance to good ignorance, help by asking questions. So you have to not only have knowledge of your topic, but know how to use questions relating to it, how to guide someone else who's at a lower stage that might be decades since you were at Socrates' stage, but you have to somehow recognize where he's at and acknowledge how difficult it is. Ask them questions so that they can gain the right opinions. So that they can realize they're ignorant. Then encourage their questions give them the right opinions, encourage them to reflect and understand on those opinions, not silently obey. Talk to others, always, in public if you like, anywhere. Not secret. There's no exclusion. Well, the only exclusion is how much you're persisting. How willing are you to be authentic to yourself and what you're here for? And the student needs to be able to confirm said understanding in direct experience. No, you don't know if there's a heaven. Nobody's left the body. Nobody's experienced the afterlife. Maybe there's a heaven, maybe there's not. Who can say? The mind of God is far outreaching of the humans. You are a mere ant to God. You couldn't know His Majesty. God works in mysterious ways. None of that horseshit. They're all different ways of people silencing this. Because they don't know how to do it. They're not a real teacher. They are cosplaying. They are NPCs stuck in the zombie virus of the pathologos. Necessarily. Because they're rejecting the actual thing we're here for. Movement of the actual analogy. Being able to confirm an experience so you don't have to believe in God. That's stupid. Be God. Experience it. Know the nature of the divine beauty itself, the model of beauty itself, that which is eternal beauty. Doesn't change forever, always, and is the paradigm and model for all beautiful things. In fact, that has to be the case to allow us to return or evolve or grow in any kind of a way. And the symposium is the steps of reaching that in learning, growth, enlightenment through following the stages of exploring beauty. Look for one beautiful person and then do this and that. Then find two beautiful people and then wonder about the beauty of all people. Then see beauty in souls. And then two souls that are beautiful, and then so on. Stages of seeing higher and higher levels of beauty that you can perceive in the physical world as steps to reach ultimately the direct understanding, or the understanding and the direct experience, confirming your understanding of beauty itself, which is the aspect of mind or being or ousia, your consciousness, you could say, if you like. The aspect of it that is beautiful. Beauty itself. Hey, welcome chatter. Pro player. Being able to philosophy is a luxury that most people don't really care about. Okay, what do you have to support that conclusion? So in order to make that statement, and for anyone to understand you here, we have to know what you're talking about. So can you define the first term, what you're calling philosophy, for me? I'm going to keep reading, but I'm still also talking to you. So we need a definition of your key term first so we can understand what you're saying. And so we can see whether or not that statement you're sharing is true or false. It's going to be one of the two. And if we learn how to think and reason for ourselves, we can make such a conclusion or make a truth determination. And if it's true, we can all benefit. If it's false, you can benefit by removing a false belief, which is not only good to you, it's good to other people. What I think philosophying is. Yes. Not how it functions, but just define it itself. So in conclusion, I'm still just being able to think about reality. And what's going on. Interesting. To be able to think about reality and what's going on. Not bad, not bad, not bad. In any kind of a way? Because I've got a racist uncle who thinks about reality and what's going on in a really racist way. He's a jerk. Is that the same thing as philosophy? So, right. So as we were saying, as a principle, any teacher or spiritual guru or self-help person or anything or religious tradition or philosophizer needs to follow this paradigm, because there's two kinds of analogies. One that's the real teaching one, and one that it's distorted reflection, which means they all have to follow these conditions. What conditions? First of all, have a knowledge of the subject and so on, but help people go through these stages. You need to encourage questions. Always. No, but you're on the clock. Or, but your lunch break is over. Or, I've got blah, blah, blah to get to. Or, no one asks those questions. You're not allowed to. Or, go to hell if you ask questions like that. You have to ask the questions to help people realize they don't know what they think they know, so they can be open to learning. That's why it's important to speak up to people who are mistaken. Even if they have guns or they're very certain or whatever. What I was trying to get at though, is that most people don't really care about stuff if we live in a simulation. Because some stuff we can never get the answer to. Ah, interesting. So it's kind of a waste of time. By the way, when you say some stuff we can never get the answer to, when you hear that in your head as you typed it, does it have a voice or a way of speaking that might help you recognize who told you that first? Or do you remember perhaps an early time when you started thinking this way? I'm curious as who told you that there is some stuff you can never get the answer to. Because it's an interesting conclusion, right? Let's say hypothetically there was an answer to who you are, why you have come here, what you're supposed to be doing, and where you're going after this incarnation. Let's say hypothetically there is an answer to those things. If someone has come along and convinced you it's a waste of time, what will happen to you as a human being here to discover what you are, why you're here, what you're supposed to be doing, and where you're going? This is a hypothetical. Because in real philosophy, we have to take both. Because real philosophy is not arguing about opinions, which can be a waste of time, yeah. And people who think philosophy is that never get two answers. That's right, because they don't know how to think, they don't know how to reason, they don't know how to conclude. Because it's not philosophy. We've been taught a bullshit version of philosophy since the Academy of Philosophy was shut down by Emperor Justinian in 523 AD to stop people from learning to understand and confirm in direct experience the nature of the divine. So Emperor Justinian can start Christianity and tell you what God wants you to do. And if he ever catches you reading that book, you'll be burned. If he catches you reading any book, he will murder you. So yeah, I agree. Those people are a waste of time. Or that activity is a waste of time. Everyone's important. But real philosophy is making this kind of a movement and understanding how to go through that, which includes learning the dialectic. The dialectic is a way of thinking. You start with a hypothesis. It seems yours, like you can tell me what your hypothesis is. Notice, it's not a declarative truth statement. This is the case. It's an if this is the case. If it's the case that you can't know what? What's the most important thing for you to know? If anything was knowable and I was a genie and I said I could grant you one wish of one object or one thing that you can know, what would you say? Yes, exactly. So what we're looking for is what's most significant and meaningful to you if it were knowable, because I'm a magic genie. Yeah. What happens when you die? Right. By the way, when you mean die, do you mean separate your soul from your physical body, which happens when you die, but some people can do it while they're alive in meditation or something like that? Like by die, do you mean separate the soul from the body? In one of the books or the dialogues Socrates has, 6 feet deep. Okay, so the final one. So Socrates says, in philosophy, we have a joke. You got to die many times before they bury you. Because the experience of death is something that you can confirm in experience. This is what we're seeing as the model for teaching that Socrates went through in the symposium. So yeah, what happens when you die? Okay, so that's what you're interested in. That's the Phaedo, by the way. We've got a series on that on YouTube. You can read along with us. Also on YouTube, link below. So to make a dialectic about it, you have to create a hypothesis. If it's possible, if you live in a universe where you can... I'll write it on the board. Start with a hypothesis. I want to know whether or not oops. Oh, my pen doesn't work. I've got to restart my thing. Maybe if I unplug it again. Plug it in again. Fix it. Yes. Hooray. Okay, so if X exists. This is the model for the dialectic. So for us, if knowledge, and by knowledge, could we agree we want both understanding plus direct experience, right? Understand it, so it's not just an overwhelming experience that you can't make sense of, but not just an understanding. You want to actually know it. You want to have a look around and get there and prove that, verify your understanding. Experience exists on side A. So if you live in a universe where it exists, and side B is if it does not exist. Make sense so far? So we're creating a hypothesis of two kinds of universes that we could exist in, that could possibly exist. And now, in each side, we have 3 levels. Definition, or the subject in relation to, talking about analogies in our reading at the moment. How does this term relate to this term? Only the term's the same, like in the middle of a mean analogy. A is to S as S is to B, you could say. Anyway, so the subject, which is knowledge, itself. How would you define knowledge if it exists? I've given you a bit of a hint here, but head start, let's say. And then the next thing is, how does it function or demonstrate? This thing you've just defined, a knowledge that is knowable of. Oh, so if knowledge exists of the what would you call it? It's hard because knowledge of the afterlife. Let's say afterlife. That works. Knowledge of the afterlife. How would it function? So how would this knowledge affect something else? So now you need to introduce another term to rub up against your subject. What subject? Knowledge of the afterlife. To see whether or not mama or papa or whoever it is who told you, you can't know such things. Maybe it was a priest, whoever it was. We're not just believing them anymore. We are learning to think and understand for ourselves, to verify, to create an understanding and potentially verify our understanding in direct experience if it turns out the subject is knowable, which would be neat. Never have to believe anyone else again in your life. Not only that, if you gain knowledge and you've gotten there through understanding for yourself, you might be able to turn around and use that knowledge as a teacher. So, as you had a teacher, then you could help someone else. This is the model of teaching. A teacher is to be you as you would then relate to someone else. But you can't know if you're in A or B, so no need to worry or waste energy on something you can't know for certain. Do you see you're making a claim about knowledge? That you can't know something. So you're claiming to know what is knowable and what isn't knowable, right? So you'd have to have a reason for being able to say what's knowable and what's knowable. That you should be able to communicate it to somebody else. Because right now, I have two options, believe you or don't believe you. But it's not really an option, because beliefs you get from childhood. So I either already believe you and I will nod and agree, and maybe we will take up guns and shoot anyone who disagrees with us as we nod and agree with each other. Or if I don't already believe it, I'll ignore you. Or if your belief is a threat to my belief, I might mock you or threaten you or kill you if I have power. But that's the belief game. That's not a teaching model. That's I am going to treat you, A is to B, as I was treated, A is to B. As my teacher told me, you can't know things, so don't worry about it, give it up, shut up. So too I will tell everyone else. So instead of imitating that game, we can develop an understanding for ourselves. Or, if you have knowledge of the topic, you have knowledge of knowledge. By the way, knowledge in philosophy is called nous. The ability your mind has to turn around and know itself, like withdrawing from your senses to know reality. It's called nous in philosophy. In metaphysics is real philosophy. That's studying the aspects of it. One of the aspects happens to be beauty itself, like knowing the nature of eternity or the divine is beautiful. And that's the steps of reaching that through pursuing beauty is the symposium. So if you have knowledge of knowledge, if you have nous, and you are happy with it, you need to be able to become a mean term. Pass it on. You can't appeal to belief. Do it because look at how clever I am, or look at how I'm mocking you, or look at whatever. Look at how fast I can talk, like Ben Shapiro or something. No. You have to help somebody else reach that level of knowledge that you have, such that you can confidently claim certain things are knowable, certain things aren't. The nature of what happens after you die is not one of those knowable things. Here are the reasons why. Therefore, don't bother going down that track that Socrates is telling you to do. Do this instead. Because while you can't know what happens when you die, you can know this thing. Otherwise, it's not a understanding, it's just an opinion that you got from someone else, which is going to block you from your own development. Our own development is learning how to reason for ourselves. That's the dialectic. There are only 4 steps. Definition, demonstration, division, and conclusion. That's it. You have to do other to other, other to self. And you only need 2 terms, the subject and another. And you only have to do it twice. What if your thing you are wondering about, knowledge, if it exists, or if it doesn't exist? You can't know anything, so give up. Roll over and die. You can't know what happens when you die. That's absurd. So we're all absurd. We're all irrational human beings. You have to create this universe as well with the same 4 steps. They'll have different conclusions, and you carry both. And you see what pans out as you learn and you seek. But you can't do any of that if you think you already know. You know that you know what knowing is, and you know that you can't know anything, so give up and don't try. You can't do this because you're already convinced you shouldn't try. Which is irrational if you're just repeating a belief from somebody else that you heard, without learning what understanding is. Or we could play the other game, which is the stagnant analogy that doesn't allow for learning or growth or development, which is not teacher is to student, as then you gain knowledge, you learn how to do this, you experience what is knowable, you find nous, you find what the object of knowledge is. Ideally, you want to keep going and see, well, hang on a second, if there is such a thing as an afterlife that is knowable in the experience of nous, you can ask other questions. What are the causes for that? And is that knowable? What's beyond knowledge? I mean, if you want to stay in the game and you want to know what the self is. But then turning around and using that knowledge and the understanding and the awareness of how difficult it was for you to go through that at every stage. The first stage, what's the first stage? Realizing you don't have knowledge. You are not qualified to talk about what you are saying. It's absurd for you to say, I know more than Socrates. You can't know the afterlife. I've never read his stuff, but I just know I know. Moving from that to, oh yeah, actually, I don't know. What'd you say? You said I don't know before, which is a good thing. Yeah, I just said IDK. So that's realizing you don't know. Really? Socrates says you can know the afterlife? And there is a study of what's knowable and what's knowable. That's called nous. I've never heard about this. My dad didn't talk about this. My preacher didn't talk about this. That's a difficult step, because if it turns out that your dad and your preacher didn't progress through the stages of spiritual and psychic development that Socrates has gone through, and Socrates is saying every single human being is here to go through, and here are the reasons why that you can understand for yourself, which requires you to develop as a person in your character, in your honesty to admit you're wrong, in your courage to seek the truth even though you don't know, in your wisdom to use understanding as you go, and your open, curious nature that you develop as you seek these answers. If you can develop in that sort of a way as a human being whilst learning what Socrates is laying out, you can know things, including where you came from, number one, what you're supposed to be doing while you're here, number two, and where you're going to be after, number three. The three fundamental questions that would make humanity rational. Now, if I was a betting man, I'd bet that whoever told you you can't know those things that Socrates shows you are knowable, and you don't, and he specifically says, do not believe me, see it yourself. If that's true, and mama or papa or dear leader or dear preacher or dear pope told me the opposite, that would mean my images of these human beings as wonderful, knowing, loving people cannot hold because it's not true. That takes courage and honesty to admit the people who you trusted betrayed you because they claimed to know shit about stuff they didn't know about. And they told you, you can't know it, just get in line. Similar to you coming here and saying, you can't know this thing. What are you doing? Functioning, A is to B, the same way someone shut you down. You are, so long as you repeat that same belief, that is, and you never question them because of whatever it is that ties you to your loyalty to that image, beloved image, then so long as you keep repeating it, you will crush others the same way you were crushed. That's the irrational analogy of A is to B as A is to B. So, to admit those people were wrong and lied to you takes a level of honesty and character that not a lot of human beings have. But what we're reading is that's a necessary first step. Because to begin the quest for the treasure of the One Piece, you first have to overcome the negative ignorance, where you think you know that there is no treasure. There is no One Piece. There is no One Piece treasure. Luffy, says Luffy's mum or dad or priest or whoever. To go from that to positive or philosophical ignorance requires a desire to reach a kind of goal that's so significant to you that you are willing to go through the challenges of questioning this so you can realize you don't know what you once thought you did. If you don't have this goal moving you, if you don't seek truth above all else, you can't be in the game. So set your most personally meaningful goal for you right now. So that's why I asked you if I was a genie and could grant you one wish. What are you most interested in? You need it. Because what we are describing is the human journey, or the hero's journey, or the quest of man. That's portrayed in all cinema. There has to be some reason for Luke Skywalker to leave the safety of his homestead, save the universe. Only here it's save your soul from ignorance and save you from repeating the repeating cycles of your problems. This is needed to solve human problems. There's a certain class of human problems that will continue to repeat until you address this. The fundamental cause of human problems: a blind loyalty to a false teacher that you grew up with before you had learnt to think and use words for yourself. And so it was too dangerous to question them when you were 3 years old, and they lied to you. The same way they were lied to, the same way you're lying to me now about knowledge. I'm not having a go at you, I'm just telling you the truth. I'm not going to baby you, because this is philosophy. It's not a babysitting class. So it's important for you to have your most significant goal in mind and try and seek it with excellence. If you can make that journey from negative ignorance, or what we call pathologos, to philosophical ignorance, realizing you don't know, then you can begin the game. I'm just talking about beginning. If you don't make that jump for yourself, there's no way anyone can help you. Because no one can drag you along. That's the belief thing. Believe me or else, or I'll kick you out of the house, or we'll make fun of you for wearing the wrong backpack, or whatever the hell. No. You have to do it. You have to do it in a certain kind of way. If you've heard this, and you've heard this for the first time, you have a choice to make based on your character. What do I want to do about this? Reject it offhand? To stay loyal to my unquestioned, unsuspected false beliefs about self and reality that all human beings have, because it's an understandable principle that's why we're reading the book together? Or am I going to be open-minded and curious and spend whatever minutes I have on this planet seeking an answer to the question, what question? Why am I here? What am I? Where did I come from? What is learning? By the way, all these questions we answer together in this community, so you can join the Discord if you like, because that's what philosophy is about, answering those questions. Not just answering them, following the logos, realizing that, hey, to have a question is to be on a quest. Give birth to the questions that are within us to give birth to. But first you have to give birth to the sick baby and abort it. That's the pathologos. And that's our question in the text. Somehow, for some reason, Socrates was a rare kind of human being who approached Diotima and says, I know what love is. And Diotima turned around and asked him some questions. And then Socrates realized he didn't know. And for some reason, Diotima said, I don't know if you could ever become an adept and know the true nature of love, Socrates. Know it. Have knowledge of it. By the way, that's something that Socrates claims he knows. So if there's any reason to trust Socrates when he says he knows something, which is very rare for him, then if you're curious enough, you can get into it and trust only as long as it takes to collect those right opinions, find the reasons why they're true, and confirm it in direct experience of beauty itself. If you can't get to the party, the directions were rubbish, and you can throw the book out the window, and you can write a nasty letter to the book publisher or something. I followed the steps of Socrates, and I didn't have a direct experience of beauty itself. I want my money back. But Diotima says, I don't know if you could ever become an adept, Socrates, but I will instruct you, and I will take no pains will be lacking. Try and follow me if you can. Why? What did Socrates do that Diotima said, you know what, I'll waste my time on you? What did Socrates show Diotima in that interaction? Well, he was able to answer questions. He was genuine in his reflection, and he came to realize he did not know that which he thought he knew. And then after going through that, his reaction wasn't unsubscribe. Screw you, Diotima. My dad told me that God was love. Have you heard that? God is love? I have. And Diotima laughed at Socrates. You really think God is love? Socrates says, yeah, everyone thinks that. Everyone knows that God is love. Diotima said, not me and you, pal. What do you mean? Well, isn't love some sort of desire for something? Right? You want your object of love? You want to marry your beloved? Yeah. And the thing we desire is, well, what you consider beautiful, right? You don't fall in love with something you think is ugly. Yeah. And not just beautiful, but good. Can we add that in? By the way, if that's love... Well, sorry, one more step. Can you desire something you already have? When you're hungry and desire to be fed, would you desire that if you're already full? Can you desire to learn the nature of what happens when our soul leaves our body at the end of our lives, so we can know where we're headed, so we can prepare for it, which is, according to Socrates, the meaning why we're here. And if we're true philosophers, we'll rush to complete our work as quickly as possible, because you can experience death while you're alive, apparently. This is Socrates speaking, not me. Can you desire something you already have? Well, of course not, says Socrates. Doesn't make any sense. So if love is a desire for what's beautiful and good, from someone who lacks those things in some way, would you be happy to say God lacks beauty and the good? Oh, my stars. Oh, my word. My heavens, said Socrates. That's right, doesn't make sense. All of the people in my life, my parents, my media, my friends, my preachers, they all said God is love, but they were all wrong. But they looked so convincing. That movement is what we're working on together. That movement. The ability to be able to follow those questions as Socrates did, without being blocked or distracted or running away in a huff. So you can actually go through that, valuing it to begin with. No, yeah, the world's about getting money. My dad was a banker and he says get money every day. Dollar, dollar bill, yo. Valuing it. And after having come to that conclusion, because you've removed the things that block you from fair reasoning, following questions, open reflection on what's most significant about self, that's the logos, those aspects. Logos and self-reflection we call ousia. So the pathologos blocks those. So as you go, you'll feel, oh, this is dumb. This is a waste of time. Maybe it's true for other people, but not me. Or I'm an Indian and the white man is better, says my oppressors. So maybe the Europeans can be philosophers, but not us Indians. We have to, all that kind of crap gets in the way of even following. And it's easy to see in others, by the way. And that's the game. Our problems are blind to us. For as long as we fail to understand their causes and their nature and their implications, which is the steps of the dialectic. What it is, how it functions, the implications and where it leads, but also its origin, cause. And then, having gone all the way through that kind of a conversation with someone like Diotima, which, by the way, takes a certain kind of quality of person to go hunting for such people, I doubt there was a big queue for the line to see Diotima to learn about the true nature of love, as there is a big line for the Pirates of the Caribbean ride in Disney, at the Disneyland park. I bet the line was much, much shorter. But after having come to that conclusion that you were wrong, and everyone else in your past who you used to believe were wrong, and being able to react in this kind of a way. And if we can look at how difficult it is for human beings to have this kind of a reaction, because 99.9999% of people currently, maybe humanity will be different soon, would react in the screw you, my dad knew everything and my mother's a saint, and I'll kill anyone who says otherwise. Or mocking or trolling or ignoring, all that sort of stuff. Counterattacks. Because we need to make the movement from true ignorance, which is called pathologos ignorance, or we are seeing as pathologos ignorance, to being open to learning, because you realize you don't actually really know. And that jump is so rare that the rarity of being a human being who can go through all those steps, come to that conclusion, and choose to persist, to stick around, to keep asking questions, keep pestering. I want to find out what the truth is about love now that I know I was wrong. Maybe it's so goddamn rare that even though Diotima didn't think Socrates could do it, make the cognitive jump to a higher level of being to experience beauty itself, to verify for himself in direct experience what he has been developing his own understanding of by seeing the reasons behind the right opinions of Diotima that he could only get if he was asking questions and persisting in Diotima, only if he is able to realize that he was wrong, but that's okay. Good kind of ignorance. Good ignorance, right opinions, seeing the reasons for understanding, confirming in direct experience. Each level requires a kind of jump, a new way of being, which means sacrifices, sacrificing harmful ways of being, sacrificing false images of our loved ones that keep us bound to ignorance and suffering. Yeah, there is some sacrifice, but you're sacrificing the shitty things to develop good things and discover the goodness of yourself. Because all of this journey is to ultimately discover what is the cause behind all of it, which is you, the self, the real you, your authentic self. Again, not to be believed. So if that's the case, that it's so rare to be able to make this jump, what jump? This one. There is no One Piece Luffy to realize, oh, hang on a second, maybe there is. Maybe I was wrong before. By the way, being wrong is never an excuse for punishment or blame. No blame game, no punishment. You can't even begin philosophy if you still think that violence can somehow make someone better. And if all human beings are ignorant, that someone gets to inflict suffering as a knower to teach them or make them better when they don't even fucking know what the truth is anyway, is ridiculous. So automatically, no blame game, no punishment. Now, are we able to make this jump? The answer is, no fucking way can we make that jump. No wonder she put all this time into Socrates, even though she thought he couldn't make those cognitive jumps. Thumbs up for Socrates. Because you can't do it. The pathologos functions as the most powerful force in the universe and as the cause of human problems, specifically because it prevents this. And further participation in that development that we call the logos. The pathologos has to sabotage your development of the logos to keep you stuck here, stuck on whatever that first island Luffy was on, the little bodunk one-horse town, dreaming of maybe leaving it on an adventure to become the king of the pirates. Nah. That's you. There is no One Piece. Because you stay in the hometown. This is true for all human beings. Luke Skywalker never leaves the moisture farm. Harry Potter never leaves the staircase, etc. Frodo never leaves the Shire. So what do? There is one thing we can do. Philosophical midwifery is the use of that same dialectic you will learn over here as you move from ignorance to right opinion, to understanding. Running out of space, going that way. Hope you can still read it. That glare's not so good, is it? Understanding. Okay, it becomes, go up, becomes knowledge. And then from here, there's another stage that phronesis. Well, we have the question of wisdom as well. I mean, there are further stages beyond that. But for our sake, let's just stay where we are. The activity you go through of using your own thinking, reasoning, and understanding for yourself, the reasons of how and why right opinions are the way they are and are true, that activity is the activity of philosophy. As said by Socrates in the Phaedo on his last day of philosophy, hours before he passed away, became 6 feet under. And as said was Socrates' teacher, Parmenides, on the first day of Socrates' philosophical journey as a 19-year-old, finds Parmenides and says, "Hey, I got some problems with your philosophy garbage. Doesn't make sense. You're all nuts." Interesting kind of guy he must have been, right? As a 19-year-old talking to the 60-year-old master and his 40-year-old student, Zeno. I read your paper, Zeno. It was garbage. Socrates. So, and that day, Parmenides said to Socrates, "You need to do something, and if you don't do it, you will never find the truth. And it will therefore be the biggest disaster in your life." In anyone's life, really. That's because it's for everyone. It's a principle. That is, the activity that allows you to reach truth is called the dialectic. Dialectic. So what? We're not going to read the Parmenides and learn that and find the nature of truth if we can't even make this jump. So why are we talking all the way down here? Are we getting a bit ahead of ourselves? Well, the problem we have is we can't make that first step. Socrates was a rare duck. Humans can't make that step. Therefore, we are blocked from our human progression through reason and understanding. Reason, understanding is up here, or logos. We are blocked from being able to learn. We are blocked from being able to solve problems, which requires understanding. Causing us to be in the situation we're in, where we are repeating the same bullshit-ass problems over and over again. Or to say it another way,
no one seems to be learning or growing or addressing actual problems.
Including every supposed philosopher I've ever seen on YouTube, not bar one. So yeah, I agree with the sentiment that normally philosophy is a waste of fucking time, because it's not philosophy. It's stealing the word from Socrates to use it in a way Socrates defined as the opposite of philosophy. He calls them not philosophia, lovers of wisdom, but philonikos, lovers of conflict, what we call today debate bros or pundits or collecting these big names to argue with people in debates. No debate here. This is friendly, this is kind, this is rational, this is, well, part of love necessarily, right? We've been seeing. So what? We can't make this jump. We are blindly loyal to the opinions we were brought up in. That plays out on the political scene, where Russians vote for Putin and Americans tolerate Trump and Germans get their Hitler and the Jews get their Netanyahu, and everyone just projects their own individual pathologos onto the collective, and then humans die. become extinct, or and then us as individuals never do what we are here to do, never do our work here as individual souls, whether or not the collective participates. The most important thing is for you to do your job. What we are learning in this series is philosophical midwifery, the activity that removes this block, allows for this progression, individually and collectively. That's called philosophical midwifery. That allows us to unblock us from this dam in our individual, intellectual, spiritual, and collective human species development. So what? This is the application of this dialectic to what is the nature of and underlying cause of this block. So we have a problem, my friends, because this is after the block. How do you use the thing that you can only learn after the block to remove the block? I don't know. I don't know. It's a puzzle, right? You could say, well, find other people who've removed their blocks and learnt the dialectic and midwifery and get them to come back and help you. Well, sure, but why would you want them to do it? You're certain you know everything anyway. And even if somebody asked you questions that showed that you were ignorant, you just ran away or called them a name or a slur or something and gave them a finger, or just genocided their whole people. Time and time again, the pages of human history is soaked in blood because we are simply...
No one seems to be learning or growing or addressing actual problems.
Because of this. That was the issue brought up in chapter 1. This is what we've been solving. So what? So there's the problem. Well, another solution that I can think of is do it anyway. Like, be open-minded and learn this, which is philosophy, which is what we're reading about we're doing philosophy in our midwifery stream, which is a bit funny. So funny. Oh, come on, it wasn't that bad of a joke. Do philosophy anyway, learn the dialectic anyway, realize you're probably not going to understand it and you're probably going to fight against it. You're probably not going to think it's the right opinion. But learn it anyway. Keep an open mind. Keep both universes open, which is part of the game, right? Being open-minded and curious. What if it was true? What if it wasn't true? Carry both. See what pans out. And then learn this as best you can. And learn the significance so you value it as best you can. So you know that I'm going to ask a midwife. I'm going to look for a midwife who's gone through this to help me, because I know a bit about the dialectic. I know a little bit about what real philosophy is compared to the bullshit thing we're sold in capitalism and Roman imperialism, the Third Reich, the Roman and Latin counterattack to our Greek and Latin philosophical and intellectual golden age and history and birthright. The counterattack, because this was known in Socrates' time. learn both as you go. But yeah, it is a problem. It is a problem. It is a problem. Because I've known people who have progressed in philosophy a long way, but are very hesitant to do midwifery. Of course, not all. You can't continue to progress while carrying a block that's inconsistent with your highest goals, so you can only make so much movement, but I don't know. It's a puzzle I'm sending out to the world. You guys do it. Solve this puzzle. If what made Socrates rare, even to this day, was that having found out that she thought she was so friggin' confident, well, Socrates thought he was so confident, he was so confident in what he thought he knew about this thing, about the divine, about love. God is love. And having been able to participate in a dialectic, because the question and answers that he had to go through with Diotima means he's not in charge. But I thought that's the whole point of life, to be in charge, own a business, or become dictator or something. So you can be in charge. You can have your own slaves. Tell people what to do. Not in a dialectic. But I thought life was about having opinions and debating. Not in a dialectic. So that's the question and answer. He had to already participate in it. And most people can't make that jump because of their pathologos, which again requires the dialectic. That's midwifery, the dialectic applied to this. So what do we do about that? If this is what we need, objectively, universally, to solve human problems, but to hear that and trust it and work on it and continue to develop an understanding of why that statement is true requires someone to do midwifery. How do you tell people they got to do midwifery? Beats me. I'm doing a stream. I'm trying to learn music and say it more beautifully. So, I'm doing enough work. You guys answer that question and get back to me. That's fair. Hooray. And if our chatter friend stayed along long enough to go through all that, you are it. So you see what it takes for you to do it, and if you succeed and fail, and come back and let us know. Hopefully succeed, so we can solve this. Actually, maybe the book will address it. Let's go back. Let's play the coming back from a tangent music. I want a bigger stuffy. They're all out of arm's reach. Clearly, Diotima recognizes the difficulty in this cognitive jump. Now, there are cognitive jumps at every stage, and we were talking about the difficulty in the first one, but in the symposium, because philosophy isn't midwifery, removing the blocks to doing the logos, it's making the jump through the logos to the real thing. So that's when we say cognitive jump in terms of the symposium, that's what we mean, the jump to beauty itself. Diotima recognizes the difficulty in this cognitive jump from understanding to knowledge, since she shares with Socrates her own reservations about Socrates' ability to make this transition, saying, "I don't know if you could ever become an adept. At least I will instruct you." She said, "And no pains will be lacking. Try and follow me if you can." And you could say, in a kind of a way, I had this kind of a relationship with the chatter. Different because the chatter didn't meet the conditions of Socrates. Like, Socrates was genuinely seeking out a person and had to travel a distance and sacrifice things and had a real question. And it's much easier to just throw anything in chat. But still crossed our paths, showed an interest in knowledge, addressing one of the 3 questions that we need to answer to be rational. Where are we going? But also, of course, I'm talking to everyone, and the chatter could disappear at any stage. I think they're gone. So, I don't know, maybe that's another difficulty. Thus, Plato presents that Socrates' growth and development was made possible because after he realized his questions to Diotima's questions were wrong, he persisted. He stayed in the chat. What?
Wow.
There you go. I thought I lost my sound drops for a minute. He persisted in his questioning of Diotima and, as a result, came to learn the reasons why these opinions about love and philosophy were right. And he can be said to have reached understanding because when one has the reasons why these opinions are right, it is called understanding. In a similar way, to reach knowledge, Socrates would have to experience the perfection of beauty, and in that way to have confirmed the understanding through the experience of beauty itself. And if you think there is nothing knowable other than what we see through our physical senses, there is nothing immortal or divine or eternal that's knowable, can't even begin this whole thing. Thus the need for midwifery. And friends annoying you, I don't know, and everyone making me the most popular, famous and richest streamer on the platform, so everyone's being reminded to do it, and so they're willing to be brave and try it. We could try it. You try giving me lots of money and making me rich. Maybe. I don't even have partnership on Twitch. I'm not even an affiliate. You can't even subscribe to me, I don't think. Anyway. Right, so confirmed through experience. In a similar way, if Agathon could accept Socrates' challenge, then he would become Socratic. If Chatter could accept the channel's challenge. For Socrates was functioning with Agathon the way Diotima had functioned previously with Socrates. In a similar way, if Socrates were successful, he in turn would be like Diotima. Thus, in the symposium, we find that Socrates modeling himself after Diotima. We can represent this kind of learning in the similes. Oh, so we've gone from analogy, as one is to one, so too is one is to other. But now we've got like. Agathon becomes like Socrates. Socrates becomes like Diotima. This allows the possibility that Agathon would look forward to meeting someone who was in chat and asking him questions about what's knowable and what's beautiful and what happens when we die. And meeting someone who was formerly like what he was and take that person through what he had been taken through. While Socrates would in turn pass on the favor to someone who was like he formerly was. Pass on the favor. In terms of cognitive functioning, we can say that Agathon has moved from ignorance to right opinion, and Socrates has moved from understanding to knowledge. We can express Socrates' development through the stages in summary form. 1. At first, Soc was ignorant. 2. Socrates realizes his ignorance and seeks to learn the right opinion about love. Rare. Often takes midwifery, right? Socrates learns why these opinions were right, and so enters understanding. Again, so immediately, if you're worried about wasting your time, if you have any tradition that doesn't follow this, or shuts you down and doesn't allow for understanding, or doesn't allow for direct experience, then I would maybe save time and not go there. Try something that doesn't limit you and keeps you in the level of belief. But again, it's your life. That sounded cheesy to say. But it is. It's an invitation. It's an invitation. It's not. I mean, the only way we can encourage people to get into it more is by making me rich. And how are you guys going to do that? How would you even do that? I'd like to see you try. Socrates recognizes his ignorance and seeks to learn the right opinions about love. By the way, that's what we do when we read. We read Plato, Socrates, the Balboa version, to get those right opinions that we can arrange in the dialectic for our understanding and confirm in our experience. And so on, continuing to use and function through the dialectic, especially in midwifery. So that's why we read, by the way, and why we are learning to read in a new kind of way, which is without interpretation. Removing the causes of our projection is midwifery so that we can read what's actually there and get the right opinions and not be unknowingly projecting the false opinions we don't know we're carrying, because that's the pathologos. Interpretation. So, number 3, Socrates learns why these opinions were right and so enters understanding. Socrates must encounter or participate in wisdom or knowledge if he is to enter wisdom from understanding. I don't know why the author isn't making clear the difference between either, but I don't know if he's equating the two. In a similar way, the pregnant parties in philosophical midwifery must. Oh, okay. So all this review of the symposium is to help us understand what we're doing here. The fun thing about it being a duality or a connected pair, midwifery and philosophy. So the pregnant party in midwifery, so in a similar way, so like philosophy is to, or midwifery is like, so recognizing their ignorance and admit they don't understand how to get out of their problem. Or realize they can't hit the truth with their current views and beliefs. So can't hit the truth with their current views and beliefs must be a kind of definition of what a problem is. And another thing you could encounter is an inability to get out of that problem. So you can't get there. And the problem stopping you from getting there, you can't get out of too. They have to seek the right opinion about their problem, which is subscribing to this stream and joining the Discord. Recognize the reasons why these opinions were right and come to understanding. That's the way that we are learning to read. We're trying our best to learn a new way of reading, specifically that incorporates this element, which is necessary in learning and removing human problems, our problems. So we try and look for dialectics and use dialectics as much as we can. I mean, that's pretty much what it boils down to. Which is fine. It's cool if it's simple. And recognize the need to grasp and confirm. This is a key one. It ain't belief. It ain't wait till you die and see. It ain't we can't know because science is limited by our senses and test tubes. Nothing outside of test tubes can be known. We must categorize every butterfly in the planet. Every butterfly must be named and put in a pin. We must torture nature so that she will reveal to us her secrets. Science. That's my imitation of science, if it was a character. So to recognize the need to confirm, to grasp and confirm in your own experience, you go to the party, hooray. Whatever understanding they have reached. So you're using your own understanding, which was the third step. So Socrates had to. Socrates was ignorant. 1. Recognizes his ignorance and seeks to learn the right opinions. 2. So ignorance, right opinion. 3. Learns why these opinions are right. Number 3 is understanding. Direct experience is either wisdom or knowledge. Similarly, we have to recognize our ignorance. Either we can't reach our problems, you can't simultaneously believe you are a soft-spoken wallflower and apply for that manager position where you have to be giving orders. I mean, that's an example, but clearly we're meaning something much more significant than a promotion at work. I mean, it will apply, but we want to know self, or as we were saying before, where we're coming from, where we came from, where we're going, so therefore what we should be doing while we're here, and how to do it. So recognize our ignorance. You can't hit the truth because you're carrying a false belief with a current belief or view, or you can't get out of your problem. Number 2, seek the right opinions of their problems, which is what we're doing here, learning, reading about midwifery and practicing it as much as we can with our friends and loved ones over coffee. Cheers. What's the time? Seek the right opinions. Recognize the reasons why the opinions are right and come to understanding. That's what we're calling a dialectic. And need to grasp and confirm their own experience in whatever understanding they have reached. Oh, no. Midwifery, what we're calling that third step. And then go out in the world and see if you can reach your goals. Or if it's time for another midwife talk. Thus, it can be said that we are like Agathon. We aspire to be like Socrates and hope to reach Diotima's rank. So we are like Agathon. We aspire to be like Socrates and we want to reach Diotima. Agathon, as ignorance, quit the exploration about the nature of love after he was led to recognize that all his beliefs about love were false. Oh. Did he rage quit? Socrates, in a similar state, sought the right answers about love. So he was different. In a similar way, those who admit to having a pathologos problem know full well that all attempts to solve it have failed, and seek through midwifery to gain an understanding of what they do not know about themselves. In that process of examining and reflecting on their problem, they go through the stages similar to the development in that Socratic quest. So yesterday I was giving a personal anecdote about 2 kind of types of people that approach me when I play music in public, and how one's kind of icky. It's the difference between Agathon and Socrates. Like being open and curious compared to trying to be right, and then when questioned, rage quitting, running away. That seems to be the difference, hey? It's interesting because debates about being right, dialectics about being curious. Isn't that interesting? Similar state, but function in a different way. So what can we say? Well, we can say Agathon we would encourage Agathon to try and solve his problem of being in that state and not continuing to pursue the right answers, not continuing to follow the logos, until he realizes he can't do it, he can't solve that problem. Then we would engage in midwifery. Whereas Socrates seems to have been in a similar state of mind, but could follow the logos, continue to follow the logos. Therefore, no problem. Because the problem is a pathologos block to following the logos. So the process of examining and reflecting on their problem, they go through stages similar to the development in the Socratic quest. The similarity is significant because learning follows the same dynamic. In the Socratic learning, there is a teaching transmission, but that is not the case in what is learned in philosophical midwifery, because no one would knowingly want to persuade another to accept as true what they themselves got rid of as false. So we go through similar stages, those four: ignorance, right opinion, understanding, and knowledge. How many parts of the dialectic did we say there were today? I forget. And there is a positive and negative version of this. How many halves to the dialectic did we say there were? Yes, in the... Right. Okay. So the conclusion is different because Socrates walks away with having learnt something that he can then pass on. But the difference in midwifery, you walk away with having learnt something that's false, that you wouldn't want to teach anyone. That's the difference. Which is interesting because we could say, well, that's the movement from being a zombie human being to being a good person. You no longer pass on what you have yourself now seen as false, while other human beings are living out problems and passing it on and harming others because they have not gone through the process of seeing what's false and getting rid of what's false. The development through these four stages require a different analogy from the mean analogy of three terms that we use to express the Dharma transmission. In that analogy, Socrates occupied the mean terms between Diotima and Agathon. But in respect to the development through each of these four cognitive stages, we will need another model. Okay, what's the time? It's getting a bit late, so how long? Okay, that's a good point to stop, I think. Getting a bit long. We had a long one yesterday as well. Yeah, it's a good place here. Yeah, here we go. So, there are four stages in the movement from ignorance to knowledge in philosophy that you can go through, that you will only want to go through usually unless you're a rare person like Socrates, only after you're free from what's blocking you from that, which is midwifery, which is the same 4 steps, but instead you end up getting rid of what's false, whereas in philosophy you end up learning what's true, that you can then use to help others learn the same thing and pass it on, which is the Dharma teaching, which brings the potential of others to fulfillment, which raises the lower to be like the higher, making a set, or what did we call it before? A set of people who are made like each other, a set of terms. Yeah, reverting upon the original principle, reverting the bottom through this functioning of a mean or a midwife or a dialectician to become like Socrates or Diotima. A common character over the whole series is what we're looking for. Producing a common character over the whole series. So as we go through those 4 stages of realizing we have a problem, seeking the right opinions through reading this book, seeing the reasons as to why they are right, either reading this book and doing it, and then confirming in your experience of having freed yourself from your problem and doing this as a midwife to others, confirm in your own experience the understanding you've reached, allowing you to then make this jump that Agathon couldn't make, which is realizing you're wrong and then staying curious and not throwing the controller at the screen, which is what the pathologos would want you to do. Make this jump here. And then we can make those other jumps that we just described. And the thing blocking us from this journey and getting in from this first transition into the game and from any level of progression through the rest of it is a false or redundant analogy, an irrational analogy, stagnant analogy, as a paradigm. So it's this analogy as a paradigm getting in the way of the actual true learning analogy paradigm. This one here. Whoops. Let's see if I got that right. Yes. And the two function according to wave theory, in that they are opposite and cancel each other out and interfere with each other. So this will help us see that you can still learn this. You can still, like, that was my first idea, the first idea that came up. You can still learn. You can still be in the, read with us and read philosophy and read the symposium with us. You can still learn this. You can still become like Socrates and Diotima. Only to the extent this is present, it will function as a wave, cancelling out various things or making some things harder. So this wave of development has the interference pattern getting in the way of our pathologos, or the other kind of analogical paradigm, which is the pathologos or sick model, which is irrational. So if this comes in completely, it completely cancels out your ability to learn. So you're stuck, like Agathon. To the level at which it's only affecting it a little bit, and maybe you are bringing your character, maybe that's why Socrates is rare, his pathologos was still around, clearly, well, if he has these ideas about God, about self and reality, but either it had been addressed sufficiently to be diminished so it doesn't completely cancel it out, or Socrates, this wave is bigger for Socrates. His passion and courage and integrity as a open, curious, fair, rational soul was such that he was still able to do some learning and make that journey. Hey, maybe that's why Diotima was saying, I'm unsure whether you'll be able to make that leap. Because normally this cancels it out. So what does that mean? Was Socrates pathologos free at the time? Maybe he was. I said before, if he had a false idea about God, but hey, he was able to change his mind. So maybe it wasn't a pathologos block. Was that what made Socrates different? Or maybe he diminished it a little bit? Or maybe he had a lot of power in his integrity and courage to keep going in spite of it? I don't know. That's where we are so far. Lots of questions to take with us into our rest of our day, wondering, and for our reading tomorrow. Thank you for the chatters who came in and the discussions we had. And the main player today was the Dancing Phoenix, I think. Just did a dance before. So he gets the round of applause for today. Press the bell. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time. Bye. Whoop.